DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is, we are starting what will be a 5-part series. Yes, a 5-part series. I'm going to discuss how America messes up and does immigration the wrong way. That's what we're going to discuss today and in the next 4 episodes of this show. Before we get into why I'm talking about this, first of all, let me tell you a couple things. If you're not on my email list, get my daily game emails for free every day to your inbox. Make sure you go to workonmygame.com and get my email straight to your inbox every day, free of charge. Secondly, my text message number is down below in the description. Once we start sending those out again, I'll be talking about that a lot more. And third, if you want to have me as your personal coach so we can take your game from where it is to where you want it to be as quickly as possible through our 4-part framework of mindset, strategy, systems, and accountability, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com and learn more about that. Getting into this topic, how America does immigration wrong. Now, this is not really to say that everything that I'm going to listen means that America is necessarily making a mistake, because I'm going to list all the possible challenges and arguments against immigration in America, which I'm going to do in the series, but it doesn't mean necessarily that America is doing something technically wrong in every single thing and that there's a way to do it, quote unquote, right. But many of these things have reared their heads in America, especially right now, as when you hear this, Donald Trump has stepped into his second administration, second run as president of the United States. And we know that he has run strongly both times that he's run, or both times that he's won, but all 3 times on. He's going to be very tough on illegal immigration, and he's not going to allow countries to send their bad people, let's just call them that for lack of any other descriptors, into this country, and they should not be allowed to stay here in this country because America does literally have laws when it comes to immigration. Now, the challenge for Trump this second time around is that he wasn't allowed to, quote unquote, finish the job that he started in his first run from 2017 up through 2020 because it was interrupted by the Joe Biden / Kamala Harris presidency, and they were doing kind of the exact opposite on immigration from what Trump preached about doing. So he has to undo a lot of stuff that they did, which is they clearly were doing, and they were wide open to doing it, and they only tried to pretend as if they weren't doing it when they looked like it was going to be used against them politically. But we'll get into all of that as we get into this series. So let's get right into it without further ado. Point number 1, topic here again today is first of our 5-part series, how America does immigration wrong. Number 1 is that it creates wage suppression. Now, again, I'm not saying America does this on purpose, but you could say that they do. Let me explain what I mean by this. When immigrants come into the country, especially immigrants who are coming here illegally, and especially those who are willing to come here and work for less money than the average American citizen is willing to work for, because American citizens have high costs of living. The cost of living in America is relatively high compared to that of many countries from which we allow a lot of immigrants, whether they come in legally or illegally. And what happens is these workers come in here, they're willing to work for less than the average American is willing to work for. And that means the overall wages for Americans just gets lowered. The standard of wages goes down because there are more workers who are willing to work for less money. I'll give you an example of this. When I was playing basketball professionally, I remember talking to some agents who were telling me that something like this exact type of thing was happening. What would happen is when you're trying to get into playing basketball professionally overseas, there are a lot of players who want to get a chance, but no one's willing to give them a chance because of their lack of resume, their lack of background, their lack of pedigree. And teams are just looking at them and saying, well, you just may not be that good of a player. So they're not even willing to take a flyer on you and give you a shot by committing any type of salary to you. So I had an agent explain to me this is what was happening, that a lot of these players who had not a strong enough resume to command a contract, they would go to overseas teams and say, well, look, I will play, let's say, even for free for a certain amount of time or for a very small amount of money, relatively speaking, less than what the average entry-level contract would be. And these players would offer to do that as a way to prove themselves. And some of these players were able to prove themselves and start a career. Others were not able to prove themselves and start a career. Nonetheless, what happened was the teams started looking at entry-level players, whether they were worthy of a contract or not, and saying, well, all of you should be willing to play a little bit for free or for this small amount of money simply because there are others who are willing to do it. So basically what happened is these no-name players who had no resume and weren't able to command any type of salary in the market, they basically lowered the market for someone coming into the door simply because they were willing to work for small amounts compared to what the normal standard had been. So they allowed the employers, which is the pro basketball teams around the world, to offer less money to everybody because they were willing to do this. And it's the same thing that happens in the workforce in the United States. If I run a business, for example, and I need some entry level workers, and I know that the average American, I have to pay them $15 an hour because no American will work for less than that, then that's the going rate. But if some immigrants come into town and they're willing to work for $5 an hour, well, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to hire immigrants for $5 an hour because I can hire 3 of them for what it will cost me to hire 1 American. So I can get a whole lot more workers for the same amount of money. I get more bang for my buck. The dollar goes further, and I still get the work done. So I am taking advantage of the fact that these immigrants are coming in, again, whether they're legal or illegal. But at the same time, it's hurting American workers who now can't get a job because they demand $15, but the immigrants are willing to work for $5. So the American either has to accept working for $5, which is unsustainable, or they'll just be out of a job. This is happening on a widespread basis in the United States of America. So as more immigrants come into the country, it is undercutting the wages for the Americans who have already been here, which is why it's understandable when an American is just against the concept of more immigrants coming in, period. Again, even if they're coming in legally, because these people are lowering the bar for what an employer has to pay an employee. And this is what we call wage suppression. It is lowering the bar. That's suppressing the wages for everybody. And again, I just explained to you how this happens in the basketball world. So I understand why some people do this. I understand if you're an immigrant and you're just trying to get some work, okay, nobody will hire me for $20. Okay, how about 15? You want to hire me for 15? How about 10? You want to hire me for 10? How about for 5? And then you can get a job. At least you have a job now. At least you're making some money now. I understand why the immigrant does it. I also understand why the business owner does it, as I just explained to you. Now, if I can get 3 workers for the same price of what I got 1 before, and they're doing relatively the same work, then I just triple my output. If it's a simple enough job that it doesn't matter if I'm paying you $5 or $15. And at the same time, I understand why the American worker is pissed off. And this is exactly what Donald Trump pressed on. He didn't explain it in so many words, and this is the genius of his speech. He didn't have to explain it, but I'm explaining to you exactly the idea, the sentiment that he was pushing when he said, we're going to be America first. We're going to focus on the people who are here now, and we're going to lower immigration, not allow so many immigrants to come into the country because they're taking our jobs. And then he focused on the extremes, which are the rapists and the murderers and the drug dealers and all, and the gang members. But he was also, without saying it, letting Americans know, we're going to lower immigration so these people stop competing with you for your job, which is, again, a genius ploy because he was putting himself in stark contrast to what his political opponents were doing, which is allowing as many immigrants in as possible. So again, it's the same thing that happened in the basketball space, as I explained, is happening with the Americans who've been here looking at the immigrants coming and competing for their jobs. Point number 2, today's topic, once again, is how America does immigration wrong. Number 2 is that this increases job competition, which I just touched all over in the first point. So immigrants come in and they're competing with Americans who've already been here for the exact same jobs. And again, this is the first time I'm saying it. I am all for the spirit of competition. I'm an athlete. I'm an entrepreneur. In both spaces, you have to compete in order to win. So I'm all 100% for competition. But I also understand that an American citizen who lives here, has been born here, has been bred here, you have centuries and generations of family going back here, you have roots here in America, you can resent the fact that an immigrant is coming in here in their first generation and now competing with you for a job. All right, that I can understand how an American can be pissed off about that. Now, some of you who are listening to this, maybe you are a liberal, maybe you're a Democrat, maybe you hate Donald Trump, maybe you are an immigrant yourself. Now you're listening to this and you're saying, well, Dre, I was an immigrant and I came in and competed and I earned my job and I do good and I pay taxes and I'm a good person and I'm a contributing member of society, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I do not doubt any of that. However, let me ask you a question. Let's say that you were established in a certain place and you've been established for a while and your family goes back generations of establishment in this place and some new person came out of nowhere and now they're coming in and now they're competing with you on equal footing. Would you be a little bit resentful of the fact that they even showed up? Yes or no? I would venture to guess that almost all of you, your answer would be yes. If you're established in a certain place and then some new people who have not done the work that you have, they have not put the time in, they haven't paid their dues the way that you paid your dues, now they're coming in and they're competing with you equally, would you have a little bit of an issue of the fact that they're coming in to compete with you? I think you would. Now, also, let me ask a follow-up question. if there was a way that you could block them or stop them from competing with you so you can continue to have your monopoly, if you will, on that opportunity that they're now causing competition for, if you could stop them from being competition so that you could have it all to yourself and continue to live fat and happy as you're living, would you do it? I think all of you also would answer yes. If I was giving you truth serum, all of you would answer yes. Now, you may not answer yes publicly because you have to continue to push the idea and support the idea that you stood behind. But privately, if you really thought about it, would you block everybody else from doing it? Of course you would. If I could have a monopoly, I've written 40 books. If I could have a monopoly on the book world where there were no other authors out there, no other books out there, the only books you could buy on Amazon were my books. If there was a way I could push a button and block every other author from selling books and only my books got sold, would I do it? Yes, I would. Why? Because I would then dominate the book market. Everybody in the world would be reading my books. I'd make a whole lot more money. Everybody would know my name, and there'd be a whole bunch of spin-off business opportunities that would come from the fact that everyone in the damn world is reading only my books and nobody else. All roads will point to me. Why would I not do it if I had a chance to do it? Of course I would. This is the same sentiment that is what I'm explaining to you. I completely understand when an American who has family going here back generations looks around at these immigrants coming in, competing with them for a job who just got here. And you're saying, well, why are these people able to come and compete with me for a job? And I had to be here for 30, 40, 80, 100, 200 years as a family to get this opportunity. This person's just walking in and getting the same opportunity as me. You may not be feeling that. You may not like that situation. And again, it may not be so much that you can do anything about it, but if you could, you would kick them out. You would keep them from being able to get that opportunity, wouldn't you? And if you want to know if this idea works, again, look at Donald Trump's campaigns. Well, he said America first, and he said we're going to stop all this immigration coming into the country. There are a whole lot of Americans who translated that to understand what I just laid out and explained to you, that they don't want the competition for jobs that have traditionally been theirs, and they were at a certain pay rate. Now they got to compete against all these other immigrants, and the pay rate has gone down. Why would you be willing? Why would you accept that? Again, I'm not against the spirit of competition, but if I could block the competition from being existing and I can just win without having to compete in certain aspects, would I be okay with it? Absolutely. And would I do it if I could? Absolutely. Now, an American, again, you may just want to compete with other Americans for the job because both of you want $20 an hour. But now you're competing with someone who wants $5 an hour. You need 20. Okay, now that's a challenge. It's putting you in a tough spot just by their very existence. So this is why I understand many Americans having a big issue with immigrants coming into your town and competing with you for a job that, again, you used to only have to compete with other Americans for, at least on an even playing field. But if someone's undercutting you on price, that's not an even playing field anymore. That becomes a race to the bottom that they are willing to win that you don't even want to get in that race. But now you don't have a choice. So, and at the same time, and this is something we're going to talk about more as we go further into the series, can you go to their country and undercut them on price? Those same immigrants who are coming here and competing with you, can you go to where they live and undercut their natives on price? No, you can't. So I, again, 100% understand why an American has an issue with this. But we're going to talk about that a little bit more as we move into the series. Moving on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is how America does immigration wrong. Number 3, strain on public services. Strain on public services simply means any human that is operating in this country is using the public services that are available that are paid for by our tax dollars. Whether they are paying taxes or not, they are using the services. As more people in general come into any space, more stuff gets used. So everybody drives cars or rides on the roads. Everyone uses the public facilities. Everyone sends their kids to schools generally. People use hospitals. Many people are pulling from the welfare fund. This strain makes more competition for all of us to get access to those services, and these services are not necessarily unlimited in availability. So the more people who are pulling on the service, the less of the service is available. Maybe the slower the service is, maybe the lower the quality of the service, or maybe you just can't get access to it because too many people are using it and the government has to go figure it out. One thing we know for sure about the government, regardless of where you land politically, is that the government is highly inefficient in delivering many services. Any of you ever dealt with a tax situation with the government is a very inefficient process. Any of you ever dealt with a healthcare situation, very inefficient process. And if you went and became a citizen the normal, slow, legal way, very inefficient and very slow, arduous process. So we don't want to be at the behest of the government needing to get a resource to us because we know they're very slow in getting them to us, and we may have a much more urgent and time-sensitive need. But when more people are using our resources, it just becomes even more inefficient than it already is. So people using all these services puts a strain on everything, and indirectly everyone. And again, there are countries out there that if you go to another country as a visitor, let's say you're an American, you go to another country as a visitor and you want to use a public service, they will prioritize their locals, their natives over you just because those people are natives and you're a visitor. And they'll tell you that directly. Listen, we prioritize the people who are from here. And if you want this service, you got to get in line between all the people, behind all the people who are from here, and then you can go. After we service everybody who's from here, then you go. And for no other reason, just for that. In America, that does not happen. America doesn't say, okay, all of you here at the ER, we're prioritizing people who are actually from America and full citizens, and then we'll get to the immigrants. You all are in line behind the native citizens. They don't do that here in America because America prides itself on we're welcoming of everybody. And there is value and benefit to being welcoming of everybody. I have a lot of people in my life who are immigrants, who were not born in the United States, who now live here in the United States as citizens. And I actually know some people who are not citizens. So there is value in that, of bringing people in and letting people in. While at the same time, again, look at other countries. You go to any other country and you try to put yourself at the front of the line for any public service, they're going to tell you get at the back of the line because you're a visitor. You don't go to the front of the line. It doesn't work that way here. Only here do we allow that. Now I understand why we allow it. I also understand why people can have a problem with it. So other countries prioritize their people before they prioritize you, even though you may be in need. And I don't blame them for doing it. Why? Because other countries, ladies and gentlemen, prioritize their citizens. This is the point that I'm making here. America wants to prioritize, we just let anybody in and we treat everybody equally and treat everybody the same. We know that they don't do that. We also know that with the diversity, equity, and inclusion priorities, let's just call it that for lack of a better term, that especially under the Biden-Harris administration that were prioritized, that it was basically emphasizing anyone who was of a minority group and de-emphasizing and going against anyone of a majority group, specifically heterosexual white men. We know this was happening. This is not even a theory anymore. We know what was happening. And the only response people have to that is explaining why it should happen, not trying to act like it didn't happen. But that's still an issue because a heterosexual white man, if he's a native of the United States of America, he should be prioritized over some immigrant woman or immigrant man who ain't from here. If you're focusing on America going first, which is why Donald Trump won the 2024 election, because he re-emphasized we are going to prioritize people in the United States of America and America itself, as opposed to trying to be the uniter who brings in everybody from everywhere and prioritizes everyone equally. Bullshit. They weren't doing that anyway, but he's not even going to pretend as if he's doing it. And I understand why he did that, and you can understand it. And if you don't understand it, again, look at the election results. All right, they were that reason. They were that outcome for this specific reason. This was the main issue as to why he won that 2024 election. Let's recap today's topic, and again, today's points rather, but this is only part one of what's going to be a 5-part series. How America does immigration wrong. Number one, wage suppression. More immigrants coming to the country, they are undercutting Americans on prices when it comes to jobs, and this is how prices get driven down. It benefits the immigrant, it benefits the business owner, and it hurts the American. Again, Donald Trump knew this. Number two, job competition. They are taking roles from Americans that otherwise would have gone to Americans. And Americans are pissed off about this because, again, you can't go to their country and compete with them for jobs, but they can come here and compete with you for a job. Number three, strain on public services. Everyone uses certain public services and everyone's just getting in line. And I can understand why an American is pissed off that they're in line behind an immigrant who's not even from here, because if you went to their country, you would not get prioritized. You get sent to the back of the line just because you're not from there. But here, they don't do that. So again, I understand why people are pissed off about this, even though there is a counter argument against it, as I made in my points. All that said, tomorrow we're going to get into part 2 of this series. Make sure you go to workonmygame.com, get on my email list, workonyourgameuniversity.com, have me as your direct coach or your personal coach. Those links down below in the description. Work on your game. Dre, all